Okay, so I'm just gonna improvise today a little bit. I was buying stuff for Cloth Diaper Month, and they didn't have any Alova suede cloth that didn't have this funny fringed edge here, which is pretty weird. But it was only on one end, so it was still like 40 plus inches of regular brown Alova. So I'm going to be using that in one of my video tutorials for next week, for next month. But my husband suggested making a rodeo vest for the dolls. And I thought that's kind of a fun idea. So we're just going to improvise. I don't have a pattern for this, but I used my shirt pattern and I enlarged it a little bit. And I just cut a front and a back, the back and the front. And I'm going to do a seam down the middle at the back. I'm going to cut it again here and do some shaping to make it more form-fitting. And then I've got a liner fabric as well, but I'm not sure if I'll get to that or not. Alova's no fray, so you can just use a regular straight stitch on a sewing machine and you can just do a seam. So it doesn't have to have a liner, but I cut some in case I decide to. I just thought it was kind of a cute idea. So I am going to cut down the middle here to separate the front and the back. And then I'm going to do a little bit of shaping to make it come in a little bit at the waist. This is totally improvised though, so it's, not going to be perfect in any way. And cut it between two of the fringes. And it's always fun to just play around when you have scraps of fabric, especially for things like doll clothes. Doll clothes and diapers both don't use very much fabric, so don't feel bad just trying something. Especially with something like this that's no fray, then it's like very forgiving. Probably a good middle point right there. My rotary cutter, my little mini mat. I have my bigger mat that I put on the ground, but in this room with the tile, I can't really use it, so I use it out with the carpet in my bedroom. And if anybody has any requests, I'm happy to do that. This is just totally improvised, random playing. I'm going to angle it down a little bit to make it a little narrower at the waist. And I don't know if I'll do any sort of closure or not. I might just have it be like an open vest. Let's have it cut in one little bit at the middle as well. And I'm not going to go all the way to the top because the shoulder tends to be wider. So for backs, you don't start the seams until a little bit lower down. But again, it's a doll outfit. They're not very shapely anyway, so. So there's back piece, front piece. Those two are done. Here's another front piece. No, it's another back piece. So let's do two from the side and one from the middle. just for some symmetry. I was working on my pattern for the woven non-stretchy pants for my video tutorial that I'm filming tonight, or for one of the two that I'm filming tonight. I was just going to instruct you how to convert the stretchy one into the woven one, but instead I'll just make a cutting template. I don't have time to do a full pattern for it, but I will be posting the cutting template online on that video, so it should make it a little bit easier, but you'll have to use the video for the tutorial. All our scraps. And since it's a vest, it doesn't need to worry about having a collar or anything like that, so that should make it just a lot easier. Set that down. And I should probably put some brown thread in here. So for anybody who's just joining me, I'm improvising a little rodeo vest for the doll. I got this Alova at Joann. They didn't have regular Alova, so I was buying stuff for diaper sewing next week. And they only had this one that had a fringe at the very edge, and my husband suggested making a rodeo vest for the doll. So we're just going to be doing some improvisation using the shirt pattern, but shaped up a little bit differently. And since it's a Alova, it's no fray. You can just cut it and just fold over the edge. You don't need to do any sort of serging or any sort of fray stopping. It's super simple. So that's what we were doing so far. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat. I've got a monitor up now so I can actually see if people are writing me. It's a lot easier. I got my son's old gaming monitor because my husband got a new monitor and gave my son his old monitor. And then now I've got a monitor down here, which is so funny to have a computer monitor in my sewing room. I feel so high tech. But I'm just sewing this for now. If there's something that you would like me to sew or any troubleshooting that you want to do, just let me know. We can stop this, set it aside, and do something else. The live streams are for whatever anybody else wants to be working on. So if you're here for a live stream, feel free. Oh, sorry about that. Feel free to suggest things. If anybody's new to sewing, I'm happy to thread my machine within view so people can see it. It's a very basic, old-fashioned style manual machine. It's a vertical bobbin, not a drop-in bobbin. So you just set it in there and lock it. Put it to the right of the little handle. Make sure my thread's even. Go down, up, over the little rising thing, I don't even know what it's called, in all the hooks, to the left of the needle. And let me turn on this light so I can see better. Since I had to take out my bulbs because they don't video well, which makes it a lot harder to thread sewing machines. I should have like a flashlight down here. And then you just use the handle, the knob I mean, and you go up. And then I tend to keep my scissors by, and I just use that to pull the thread through. a little bit. Okay, so got my pieces here. We're just going to be using a straight stitch. This one, the V is the front. I'm going to wait to sew that down until I decide how much I want it to dip. And then the one with the higher neckline is the back. And since I'm just totally improvising, I'd probably do side to side first. Or you could do the two back panels together first. You put the faces toward each other. And then you just sew down a straight line down the side. The way that I do liners is I sew them totally separately, and I leave the arms or wherever they're going to attach unsewn, and then I just fold that part in and sew it on at the end. But for something like this, it's, you know, it's a doll outfit. It can be done however you want to do it. Nobody's going to be looking that closely at it, and if they do, well, you know, if you wanted to start selling, you could work on practicing a little more. I tend to use my foot as kind of a sewing guide. And I just tug alongside the foot. With these little gaps here, it's going to be kind of interesting. I've never sewn with fringe before. I'm sure there'll be some things I have to change. I've just never had a reason to, but having this random bit of extra fringe is kind of fun. So now you've got your middle of your back sewn. And if you remember, we angled it at the shoulders a little bit narrower so that it comes in a little bit at the waist. I made this quite long, so this would be like a long, it wouldn't be like a short vest, it'd be a very long vest on the doll. The normal doll shirt ends just about here. So it would be more like a sort of one of these long house coats that people wear these days. So now you've got your middle. Now we can do, what I'm going to do is my shoulders right here. So I'm going to lay out my back panel and then do one of my front panels. Then I'm going to attach them at the shoulder. Although actually, now that I think about it, I think the better thing to do... No, I'll do this first. Improvisational sewing. I was thinking I might go down the armhole first, but I think I'll do the top first, then the armhole, then the side, to hide those seams. Anybody has anything they want to see sewn? Let me know. Or you can just watch me. It's not super exciting. Or we can just chat. If there's anything you want to chat about. There's one shoulder. Now the other shoulder. The only time I've ever sewn like coats or vests has been for costumes and cosplay, so I'm sure there's probably a better way to do this. But those were lined. Except for my White Rabbit from Alice in Wonderland. That one wasn't lined. I did a corduroy unlined jacket because it was already over a rabbit suit, so it didn't need to have too much. So now you've got your shoulders done. your back. It's already looking like a little vest, huh? I mean, honestly, this is no fray. You could just do a cutout piece of fabric since this comes pre-fringed from Joann anyway, so you don't need to even sew. But what I'm going to do at this point is fold in the armholes a little bit to make it kind of come in a little bit from the shoulders. And what I'm going to do, since this is just sewn and not serged, is I'm going to separate this out. If you wanted to iron it, you could iron it flat. But I'm not going to get out my iron or anything like that. Not during a live stream. And just press that flat there. You can see. Just pressing the seam apart. When you're working with coats, you typically will have that kind of a seam. If you're working with something that is fraying, usually they'll serge the sides separately because there's so many layers. You don't want to have to go through more layers than necessary. So having it be separately serged and then sewn down makes it for less thickness, like less bulk in any one spot, which is really nice to have. And now we're going to take this part here and fold it in. And depending on how thin you want it at the shoulder, you can fold it in more or less. I'm just going to tack it here, or pin it maybe, and then slowly work around that corner. There. And then just work it around that corner. It's not a very sharp corner. I just used my t-shirt general shape. Take out my pin. And just keep working it around that corner. And then you've got your nice little sewn down edge. So you don't even need to worry about doing a liner or anything. And it's no fray, like I said, so it won't, there's nothing that can happen to that. So now we can do the inside of the neckline and the other side here the same way. If this works out well, I can do a tutorial for this later on, but I'm pretty booked for January, so it would have to wait till February probably. I'm just going to be doing the woven and stretchy fabric pants, shirts, and a dress for this week. And then come, January, but not day after tomorrow, more like next week, we'll start doing the cloth diaper sewing month. kind of funny sewing such small things. You think sewing baby stuff is small, and then you sew doll stuff, and it's crazy small. Try to fold it in about the same amount as you did on the other side. Pull out my pin. Make sure it's flat over that seam. And then go around the last curve. I think I'm going to wait on the neckline until I see how the rest looks, to see how big I want to make it. So the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to fold it so that their insides are on the outside. You can see all your seams that you just did. There's the one down the middle of the back. And there's the ones on the arms. Make sure they're all nice and flat. They look great. And now we're going to pair up the part under the armpit here. Line it up how you want to see it lined up. And if you want to do more shaping at this point, if you wanted to make it, tighter fitting on the doll or looser or whatever, however you want to shape it, you could sew it at a more sharper angle. You could cut in a little bit more on the armpit. I'm just going to leave it loose. I'm not going to worry about it, but you could try it on. I mean, we could try it on the doll right now. It's probably a good idea anyway. We've got our doll right here. She's got the shoulder straps done. It's kind of like a smock. The front we can shape after we're all done, so we know how it's going to work. And then we've got the sides here. And you could say, do you want it to come together all the way? Do you want it to be like further out? How's it going to fit on the back? How tight do you want it to be? Do you want it to be loose? Right now it's really loose, but I think I'm going to leave it loose. It would be quite baggy. But easier to put on and everything if it's baggy anyway. So let's do our inside on the outside, faces toward each other. Cut off our extra strings so they don't get in the way. And then pair up the sides here and sew down the sides. I'm going to use some clips here so that I don't get my fringe uneven. Wherever my clips are. There they are. In my pile of mess. All lined up. I use the side of my foot as my guide. goes all the way up. And you can trim this a lot closer when you're done. Or you could fold it flat and sew it again and make like a triple seam down the side to hold it all really, really nice and even. It all depends how much detail you want to put into it. Like if you were going to make this to sew, you could do some really pretty detailing. I mean, make this to sell. Obviously to sew. Words hard. Okay. Make sure everything lines up good on the other side. Clip it again. You can put as little or as much detail into doll clothes as you want. Most kids aren't going to notice really fine details, but if you were doing it for an older kid or for a collector or to sell, then I could totally see putting some really nice detail work. I know my kid would never notice. Okay, so now you've got the armholes done, the side seams done. Very nice. Looks very even. And then you can decide how you want your neck shape to be. You can decide if you want to do any sort of seam detailing besides just pressing them. You can decide if you want to do a liner. You can decide if you want to do a closure, if you wanted to do like hooks or something, or if you wanted to do ties, you could sew on a tie and have it tied together at the chest. Again, with the Alova, you wouldn't even need to sew it. You could just literally cut a strip and that would stay fine because it doesn't fray. So at this point, I'm going to do my neck, my neckline. I think I'm going to deepen the V at the front a little bit, but leave the back where it is. If you were going to be doing a coat instead of a vest, you could add your collar on at this point instead. So we're going to do this the same way that we did the armholes. We're going to pin it in at the back on the seam and then just work it around. Trying to keep it fairly even. There's the other seam at the shoulder here. Push it flat. Fold it in until it's the desired width you want on the shoulders. If you want it to be a wider shoulder, you can widen the cut from beyond the shirt template pattern. There's one shoulder. There's the other shoulder. The majority of the things that I sew are improvised sewing like this. And then if I like it, I might make a template for other people to use, but most of the time I'm just playing around with old fabrics, things that I don't worry about damaging or wasting. Remnants, things like that. Okay, so I'm going to do a deeper V at the front, so I'm just going to let it go a little deeper. You can trim excess when you're done. And then just go slowly around the curves. Careful over your pinned area. Make sure that it's flat there. You can go back and forth a little bit too if you're worried about the durability there. Take out your back seam pin. Aloba is a nice fabric for this because it has just a little bit of stretch, just a little bit of give, which makes it nice for going around these corners, these curves, without having to cut your fabric and notch it out at all. Then look at how much I did on the other side, so I get a gauge for doing the same amount on this side. Good. Perfect. Now you've got your neckline done. You can stretch it out a little bit so it doesn't pucker. Trim your threads. At this point, you want to decide how much you want it to be in the front. Do you want it to be wide with buttons and do buttonholes or clasps, or do you want to just take off a little bit and have it overlap with like snaps? I'm just going to do it so that it's fairly even with the neckline seam, and then just sew it straight down. If you were doing a liner, at this point you would put them together and just do this seam with them together. Straighten everything out. Trying to decide if I want to add a tie at the end or if I want to just leave it open. Kind of like the idea of a tie, but I also like the laziness of not doing more. Lower my needle, line everything up. And now we can just trim everything up. If you wanted to add extra seams, make it a little prettier, you could. Did we miss any threads? I don't think so. I think that's it. You can go in and cut off the extra fringes from the back here where they overlapped. I kind of like how the extra ones look at the front though. But in general, I think it's probably a good idea. Just cut straight across where the fringes are. You could actually use those for your little loops on the front. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll get a button and I'll sew these down like that through one side and have those be button loops. Wouldn't that look cute? And you're not even wasting anything. Won't do that on camera though, because I don't know where my buttons are currently. I haven't used them in a long time. I think I have them in a drawer in a little baggie of buttons. But I like that idea. I think that'll be pretty cool. How many would I want to do? One at the top right there, and then one like an inch or 3/4 of an inch below it. So like 4. That'd be cool. I like that. I like that idea. So now let's put it on our doll. Since we used the shirt pattern, the back width is obviously enough to not have to stretch to put it on. And like I said, you could have made it more fitted at the waist, but I don't think it needs it. It's very wide across the back. If you wanted to make it more fitted, you would just do a sharper angle here at the middle seam and at the side seams. You could pull it in a little bit. But I think the loose is really nice. And it's easy to put on and off. There you go.